The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as Kate Middleton stood by the large window in her private quarters. Her fingers traced the cold glass while she watched the groundskeepers tend to the rose garden below. These roses had been planted when she first arrived at the palace, full of hope and dreams about her future with William. Now, 7 years later, everything felt different. William entered the room quietly, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. He had been avoiding this conversation for weeks, but they both knew it could not wait any longer. The distance between them had grown so wide that even standing in the same room felt like they were miles apart. Kate turned around slowly, her eyes meeting his for the first time in days. The silence stretched between them like an invisible wall. William's hands were clenched at his sides, his jaw tight with the weight of unspoken words. Kate noticed the dark circles under his eyes and wondered if he had been sleeping as poorly as she had. The palace felt more like a prison than a home these days, with its endless corridors echoing their loneliness. Kate remembered their wedding day, how William's eyes had sparkled with joy when she walked down the aisle. The whole world had watched them promise to love each other forever. Millions of people had celebrated their fairy tale romance. But fairy tales, Kate had learned, were much different from real life. The pressures of royal duty, the constant scrutiny from the media, and the expectations placed on them had slowly chipped away at their connection. William cleared his throat, breaking the heavy silence. He wanted to say something, anything, to bridge the gap between them. But every word felt inadequate. How could he explain that the weight of his future crown felt heavier than his love for her? How could he tell her that sometimes he looked at her and felt nothing but the crushing responsibility of what their relationship meant to the monarchy? Kate understood without him having to speak. She had always been able to read his expressions, even when he tried to hide his thoughts. The realization that their love was not enough to overcome their circumstances hit her like a physical blow. She had sacrificed so much to be with him, leaving behind her old life, her privacy, her freedom. But love, she now understood, could not survive on sacrifice alone. The palace staff continued their daily routines outside their door, unaware that inside this room, two hearts were breaking in silence. Kate thought about all the public appearances they had made together, smiling and waving while cameras captured what everyone believed was a perfect royal romance. The irony was almost too much to bear. They had become experts at pretending to be happy while slowly dying inside. William stepped closer, reaching out his hand toward Kate's face. For a moment, she thought he might touch her cheek the way he used to when they were young and hopeful. Instead, his hand stopped midway, hanging in the air between them before falling back to his side. That gesture said more than any words could have. They were too far apart now, and neither knew how to find their way back to each other. Kate's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. She had cried enough tears in private over the past months. The woman who had once laughed easily and brought light to William's serious nature was disappearing, replaced by someone who felt like a stranger even to herself. The palace walls seemed to press in around them, suffocating any hope that remained. The sound of footsteps in the corridor outside reminded them both that their private moment would not last long. Soon, they would have to put on their public faces again and pretend that everything was fine. The thought exhausted Kate more than any royal duty ever had. How many more fake smiles could she manage? How many more public events could she attend while feeling so empty inside? William turned away from her, walking to his desk where official papers waited for his attention. Even now, duty called to him more loudly than love. Kate watched him go, understanding that this was how it would always be. The crown would always come first, and she would always come second. She had known this when she married him, but knowing something and living it were completely different things. The afternoon light began to fade, casting the room in golden shadows. Kate realized that this might be the last time they would be alone together like this, without pretense or audience. Tomorrow, they would return to their roles as the perfect royal couple, but tonight, they could finally acknowledge what they had both known for months. Their love story was ending, not with anger or drama, but with the quiet acceptance that sometimes love is not enough. As evening approached, neither of them moved to turn on the lights. The growing darkness felt appropriate somehow, matching the heaviness in their hearts. They had shared so many dreams in this room, made so many plans for their future together. Now those dreams felt like they belonged to different people, people they used to be before the weight of the crown changed everything. Kate finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. She did not say goodbye, because that would make it too real. Instead, she simply acknowledged what they both knew to be true. Their chapter together was closing, and tomorrow would bring new challenges that they would face apart rather than together. The fairy tale was ending, but perhaps, Kate thought, it was time for a different kind of story to begin. The next morning arrived with unusual quietness in the palace. Kate woke before dawn, her body automatically following the royal schedule, even though her heart felt completely disconnected from her duties. She lay in bed listening to the silence, knowing that William had already left for his early morning briefings. They had perfected the art of avoiding each other while still living in the same space. Kate's lady-in-waiting knocked softly on the door, bringing tea and the day's schedule. Today was particularly challenging because they had a joint charity event in the afternoon. It would be their first public appearance together since their silent conversation the evening before. Kate wondered if the cameras would be able to capture the change in their dynamic, or if they had become so skilled at hiding their true feelings that even the most observant photographers would see nothing different. Getting dressed felt like putting on armor. Each piece of clothing, each accessory, was chosen to project an image of happiness and stability. Kate looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Where once her eyes had sparkled with genuine joy, now they held a carefully practiced brightness that felt hollow. She practiced her smile, making sure it reached her eyes the way the palace communications team had taught her years ago. Meanwhile, William was in his office reviewing briefing papers, but his mind kept wandering to Kate. He thought about the early days of their relationship, when they were just university students with no idea that their love would one day become a matter of state importance. Back then, he could make her laugh until her sides hurt, and she could make him forget about the weight of his birthright. Those moments felt like they had happened to different people. His private secretary entered with updates about the charity event. The cause was close to both William and Kate's hearts, something they had championed together when their partnership felt natural and meaningful. Now the thought of standing beside her and speaking about unity and hope felt like the cruelest kind of irony. How could they inspire others to believe in love and commitment when their own foundation was crumbling? The palace staff had begun to notice subtle changes in the atmosphere. Conversations between William and Kate had become purely functional, focused on schedules and obligations rather than personal connection. The warm moments that staff used to witness, the private jokes and gentle touches, had disappeared completely. However, everyone maintained professional silence, understanding that royal privacy was sacred, even when cracks began to show. Kate spent the morning visiting with children at a local hospital, one of her favorite royal duties. Being around young people always reminded her of what truly mattered in life. The children did not care about royal protocols or media expectations. They just wanted someone to listen to their stories and show genuine interest in their lives. For a few hours, Kate felt like herself again, laughing authentically and finding purpose in bringing joy to others. One little girl, barely 6 years old, looked up at Kate with wide, curious eyes and asked if she was happy. The question was so innocent and direct that Kate felt her carefully constructed composure waver for a moment. She knelt down to the child's level and said that happiness came in many different forms, sometimes in big ways and sometimes in small moments like this one. The child nodded solemnly and gave Kate a drawing she had made, a picture of a princess who looked sad but was surrounded by flowers that made her smile. That afternoon, the moment Kate had been dreading arrived. She and William stood side by side in the car on their way to the charity event, separated by more than just the physical space between them. They reviewed their talking points one final time, each knowing their role in the performance they were about to give. William would speak first about the importance of the charity's work, then Kate would share a personal story about meeting beneficiaries. They would stand together, smile together, and answer questions together, all while feeling completely alone. The crowd outside the venue was larger than expected. People had come from surrounding communities, many bringing flowers and handmade signs expressing their love and support for the royal couple. Kate felt a pang of guilt looking at their hopeful faces, knowing that these people believed in a love story that was quietly ending. Their faith and admiration felt both touching and heartbreaking. Inside the venue, William and Kate moved through the crowd with practiced ease. They shook hands, listened to stories, and posed for countless photographs. To outside observers, they appeared to be the same loving couple that had captured hearts around the world. William would occasionally place his hand on Kate's back to guide her through the crowd, and she would lean slightly toward him when they listened to speakers, but these gestures felt more like choreography than genuine affection. During the formal speeches, Kate found herself studying William's profile as he addressed the audience. She remembered falling in love with his passion for helping others, the way his voice would change when he spoke about causes he cared about. That passion was still there, but somehow it felt distant from her now, like watching a stranger who happened to share familiar features with the man she had once known completely. When Kate's turn came to speak, she shared the story of meeting a young mother who had struggled with mental health challenges after losing her job. As Kate described the woman's journey from despair to hope, she realized she was also telling her own story in a way. The words about finding strength to continue when everything felt impossible resonated deeply with her own situation, though no one in the audience could know the full meaning behind her carefully chosen phrases. After the event, they rode back to the palace in the same uncomfortable silence that had become their new normal. Kate stared out the window at the people on the streets, living their ordinary lives with ordinary problems and ordinary joys. She envied their freedom to love and leave, to make choices based on their hearts rather than duty and obligation. The golden cage of royal life had never felt more confining. That evening, they attended a private dinner with family members, another obligation that required them to maintain their facade. Sitting across from each other at the formal dining table, making polite conversation with relatives who had no idea about the crisis in their marriage, felt like the most difficult performance yet. Every smile felt forced, every laugh felt hollow, and every moment of pretending that everything was fine chipped away a little more at what remained of their connection. Later, alone in their respective rooms, both William and Kate reflected on how the day had gone. They had successfully maintained the illusion for another day, but each public appearance was becoming more emotionally exhausting. The weight of carrying on this performance was beginning to affect not just their relationship, but their individual sense of who they were becoming. They were losing themselves in the roles they had to play, and neither knew how to find their way back to authenticity. 3 weeks later, the inevitable moment arrived when they could no longer avoid making a decision about their future. Kate had requested a private meeting with William in the garden, away from the listening ears of palace staff and the weight of royal portraits watching from every wall. The autumn air was crisp, and fallen leaves crunched under their feet as they walked along the path they had strolled so many times during happier days. William knew why Kate had asked to meet. He had been preparing for this conversation, but now that the moment was here, all his rehearsed words seemed inadequate. Kate stopped walking near the fountain where he had once surprised her with flowers just because he wanted to see her smile. Now that same fountain seemed to mock them with memories of who they used to be together. Kate spoke first, her voice steady despite the emotion she was holding back. She told him that she had been thinking about what would be best for both of them, for the monarchy, and for the people who looked up to them. She had reached a conclusion that broke her heart, but felt necessary for everyone's well-being. Sometimes, she said, the most loving thing two people can do is admit when they have grown too far apart to continue together. William listened without interrupting, his hands clasped behind his back in a gesture Kate recognized as his way of maintaining control when emotions threatened to overwhelm him. He had hoped they could find a way to rebuild what they had lost, but deep down, he knew she was right. They had both changed in ways that made their relationship incompatible, not because either of them was wrong, but because they had evolved into people who needed different things from life. The practical details of their separation would need to be handled carefully, they both understood. The media attention would be intense, and the public reaction unpredictable. People had invested so much hope and joy in their love story that its ending would feel personal to millions of strangers around the world. Kate worried about disappointing all the young women who had looked to her as an example of finding happiness within royal duty. William's greatest concern was the impact on the monarchy itself. His relationship with Kate had modernized the royal image and brought them closer to ordinary people. Her warmth and genuine nature had been exactly what the institution needed to remain relevant in a changing world. Losing her would mean losing more than just a wife. It would mean losing a bridge to the hearts of the people he would one day serve as king. They talked about the good memories, the moments when their love had felt strong enough to overcome any obstacle. Their wedding day when the whole world celebrated with them. The first time she had made him laugh during a particularly stuffy state dinner. The quiet evenings when they had planned their future together, believing that love would be enough to carry them through any challenge. These memories felt precious and painful at the same time. Kate admitted that she had been struggling with her identity for months. She had worked so hard to become the person she thought William needed, the perfect royal wife who could handle any situation with grace and dignity. But in becoming that person, she had lost touch with who she truly was underneath all the expectations. She needed time to rediscover herself, to figure out what her life could look like without constantly considering how her choices would affect the crown. William shared his own struggles with the impossible balance between personal happiness and duty to his future role. He loved Kate deeply, but he had realized that his love for her was becoming overshadowed by his anxiety about whether their relationship was serving the greater good. That realization had filled him with guilt and confusion, making him withdraw from her emotionally as he tried to sort through his conflicting feelings. They agreed that their separation would be handled with as much privacy and dignity as possible. There would be an official statement, carefully crafted to express their mutual respect and continued friendship while protecting their personal pain from public scrutiny. They would continue to work together on shared charitable causes, maintaining a professional relationship that honored their history while acknowledging their new reality. The hardest part was acknowledging that they still loved each other, even as they were choosing to part ways. This was not a separation born from anger or betrayal, but from the painful understanding that sometimes love is not enough to overcome fundamental incompatibilities. Their love had been real and meaningful, but it had not been strong enough to survive the unique pressures of their circumstances. As the sun began to set, they walked back toward the palace together for the last time as a couple. The staff would know something had changed the moment they saw their body language, the careful distance they now maintained between themselves. Word would spread quickly through the palace that the fairy tale was ending, though the official announcement would not come for several more days. That night, Kate began the process of mentally preparing for her new life. She would leave the palace gradually, maintaining appearances until the transition could be managed smoothly. She thought about returning to some form of normal life, though she knew that normal would be forever changed by her years in the public eye. The prospect was both frightening and liberating. William spent the evening alone in his study, looking through photographs from their relationship. Each image captured a moment when they had been genuinely happy together, when their future had seemed bright and uncomplicated. He wondered if he would ever find that kind of connection with someone else, or if the crown would always stand between him and authentic love. The announcement came 3 days later, released simultaneously to all major news outlets to prevent speculation and rumors from spreading. The statement was brief and dignified, expressing their mutual decision to separate while maintaining their individual commitments to charitable work and public service. It thanked the public for their support and requested privacy during this difficult transition. The public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Social media filled with expressions of sadness, shock, and support. Many people shared their own stories of relationships that had ended despite genuine love, finding comfort in knowing that even a fairy tale couple could face the same challenges as ordinary people. Others expressed anger and disappointment, feeling that William and Kate had somehow failed them personally. Kate read some of the public responses, touched by the outpouring of understanding from people who recognized that ending a relationship could be an act of courage rather than failure. She realized that their separation might actually help some people feel less alone in their own struggles with love and commitment. Perhaps there was some meaning to be found in their pain after all. Months later, Kate settled into her new life with surprising grace. She continued her charitable work, though now with the freedom to choose causes that truly spoke to her heart rather than ones chosen for their political appropriateness. William focused on preparing for his future role, finding solace in his duty even as he continued to heal from their separation. They occasionally saw each other at public events, greeting one another with warm but careful politeness. Sometimes Kate would catch William's eye across a room and see a flash of the man she had once loved completely. Those moments were bittersweet, but they no longer caused her pain. Instead, they reminded her that their love had been real and valuable, even if it had not been meant to last forever. Their story became a different kind of inspiration than either had expected. Instead of proving that love conquers all, they had shown that sometimes the most loving thing is to let go when holding on causes more pain than joy. Their silent farewell had indeed moved millions, but not in the way anyone had anticipated. It had taught the world that even the most beautiful love stories can end with grace and dignity, and that sometimes goodbye is the kindest word two people can say to each other.